my job is to make sure that any child between the age of 4 and 13 loves jiu-jitsu until they turn 16. Okay, so if I'm too hard on them and they hate it and they don't like it, they leave. My job is to make sure that I teach them jiu-jitsu, but I make sure they have enough fun that they want to stay in jiu-jitsu until they're 16. When they're 16, they get graded as an adult. They start learning as an adult. It's a little bit different. They get to make their own choices. But if I can make them enjoy it that much that they stay from the age of 4 till 16, then I've now got a long-term member. I've got a kid that's done jiu-jitsu for 12 years that's now going to get a blue belt and go on to be a great adult addition to my gym.
G'day, George Fourie. Welcome to the Martial Arts Media Business Podcast. Today I'm joined by professional MMA fighter, UFC fighter, and owner of Base Training Center in Brisbane, Damien Brown. Welcome to the show.
Hey man, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Good stuff. So you've had a complete career between martial arts and your business. But before we get into the good stuff, question I always like to ask up front. What's been your go-to marketing strategy, the thing that you guys do that generate the most students for you on a consistent basis? Consistently, or that one thing that that's the hook?
Well, typically the greatest marketing strategy we had was Facebook ads. You know, social media is so big now. If you're not using it, then you're either behind the times or you're just too stubborn to do it. Potentially you don't know what you're doing, so outsource it. I'm a massive believer in outsourcing anything that's not your line of expertise. So I just think that everyone should be advertising on social media.
Yeah, cool. So now for you guys, is that when you do the ads, do you have specific offers that you run, like mini courses or like challenges, or just a straight sort of free trial, paid trial that works best?
We sort of market like training camp type situations, and people typically don't want to, they don't want to commit to longer, especially in martial arts, because most people have a reasonable amount of anxiety with just starting. So the idea of doing it for 12 months is terrifying. So any kind of short-term commitment, enough to sort of help a person understand that they need to be accountable, but also not long enough that it creates fear of being locked into something that's terrifying, I guess. So you've got to find a balance between that. The thing with martial arts, particularly jiu-jitsu, in our case, is that it takes you about 3 months to learn how to swim. And that's without any knowledge. So you just got to learn, like, what's even going on. Like, most people, position-wise, don't know what's going on. Concept-wise, don't know what's going on. Forget techniques. It takes you about 12 weeks to get your head around anything. So I think that's a good time frame to get people to commit to, but even sometimes that can be too long. So I think from a business point of view, no locking contracts are ridiculous for adults, but from a martial arts point of view, 12-month contracts sometimes can be a big hump in the road to get over. So yeah, somewhere in the middle there is pretty good. And we advertise it like training camps.
I love that. Training camps. You guys focus mostly on jiu-jitsu. I'll zoom back into a bit of the marketing chat and so forth, but give us a bit of a rundown. I've got a bit of an idea of your story of sort of where you started, but if you can give us sort of a roundup, where did it all begin and how did you get into the martial arts space?
Well, martial arts for me was a non-negotiable from my dad when I was 6, I think. I could play any sport I wanted as long as I did martial arts. So I played football or rugby league and did karate, particularly Zendu-Kai back then. Did that for about 7 years. Early teens, we moved to somewhere where there was none. So football it was for a few years there. Joined the army when I was 21, and I needed something to sort of get my head straight and get back into fitness after some surgery in the military. And so martial arts, I just turned to it again, and I've been doing it ever since. So in my early 20s, started kickboxing again, and then went from kickboxing to jiu-jitsu to MMA in a short period of time. And basically that led me to 13 years later and 2 gyms.
Very cool. If you can go a bit deeper, if you go back to just, you went from training, then you started the MMA career. What pushed you to go to that level? Was that, and that was after the military, right?
No. It was during the military time, actually.
During the military.
I didn't really know. Well, when I did martial arts as a kid, I was very competitive. I competed every month in, most people would know them. They're national all-stars tournaments that they're around a long time ago. I don't know if they're still going, but National All-Stars was just basically like a karate tournament, and they ran everywhere. And our school used to hire a minibus. Our karate school used to hire a minibus, and we would drive at 3 a.m. We'd drive down to Melbourne from Albury and compete all day and then drive back. It was like the longest day ever. 3 o'clock in the morning as a 7 or 8 year old, stand in the street waiting for the bus to pick us up, and then we'd get home sometimes like midnight on a Sunday night. And that was my childhood, and I was super competitive. I played football, like everything was competition for me, winning and losing. There was no such thing as, anticipating and being rewarded for it. It was, if you didn't win, you didn't win. I just had that in me. So when I turned back to martial arts for some, fitness-based stuff, and sort of just to get my life a bit more sorted, then it only took about, 10 months or something of kickboxing. And then I started to feel like I wanted to have a fight. And then I had one fight and won, and then I had another fight and won. And then the coach at the time, Ian Bone, talked me into doing jiu-jitsu. And then I was like, all right, I want to have an MMA fight. So we had an MMA fight. I lost that. And then decided that I would never be submitted again, which actually turns out was bullshit. But because I did get submitted multiple times again. But at the time in my head, being an infantry soldier, I was like 10 foot tall and bulletproof, and I got humiliated, so to speak, or my pride was dented. So I started doing jiu-jitsu 6 days a week. Got right into it. Come back, went 6-0 as a pro, and then I made a lot of bad choices, I guess, contract wise and fight wise. Nothing that hurt me, but just probably could have taken a better path in my career.
Can you give an example?
Yeah, just taking contracts in Europe where you fly yourself and stuff like that, as opposed to typically a fighter that fights outside of their hometown, they get their flights, accommodation paid for. Sometimes you get a bit of food money and you get paid. And then, there's promotions across the world that will give you opportunities, but you have to fly yourself and stuff like that. So, I did that sort of stuff. I took a fight on 2 weeks' notice in Macau on Legend FC just because I really wanted to fight internationally. And rather than seeing the big picture and just kind of hanging around for a bit and taking my time, I rushed into an overseas fight. I got injured inside of that 2 weeks, and I still fought. So fighting injured, I mean, like real bad injuries, like MCL tears and stuff. Like fighting through that kind of stuff, I think when you're an up and comer and you're not already at the top, I don't think it's necessary. I think you can take your time. And so, yeah, I feel like there's just some mistakes I made along the way that I could have had a much easier path, but I definitely wouldn't change my path. I've got a lot of lessons that I get to pass on to my members and stuff now. So yeah, it's pretty good.
That's awesome. So you coaching your students going through that journey, what are the guidelines that you put in place for them? What do you advise them on how to go about their path?
I wouldn't so much say I advise them about how to go on their path. More like they just do what I tell them they do. I used to manage myself and stuff. I get all my own fights and stuff like that. Whereas my guys fight who I put in front of them. And if I tell them they're not fighting, then they're not fighting. And so it's more just making sure that I don't leave them to their own devices and allow them to make the mistakes that I made because they're not experienced. And instead, I make sure that I'm there for them, that I'm guiding their career, and that I'm helping them, become better athletes or better martial artists in between fights. So I think more for me is just making sure that I'm in charge, so they don't make those inexperienced mistakes.
Cool. You got into the fighting. How did the UFC and all that come about? How did you progress further into your career?
I just sort of started out 6-0 as a pro, and it wasn't until I sort of was like 5-0 or 6-0 that I was like, oh, I could probably fight in the UFC one day. But back then it was difficult because, when I was young, it was more like trying to get into the UFC. You had to kind of go overseas and train in America and be accessible. You had to have a visa, and so from that point of view, it was difficult for me. Because I had a job, and sort of like my values were that, like I needed to support my family, and my wife worked full time, but I still felt like I needed to be there for my family. So being the guy in my family that didn't earn any money just didn't sit well with me. So, I always had a full time job. I didn't really think that quitting everything to move overseas was the right thing to do, especially in a sport that's so young where you don't make enough money or fighting to support your family. Like, I don't know, maybe one year you make 100 grand, 150 grand with the bonuses or something, and the next year you'll make like 10. And so it just seems like a really, unstable sort of way of supporting your family. So I never really looked at fighting as a income or a job, but more a side gig, which potentially is my issue. Maybe I could have went further quicker. Who knows? But I don't regret it. I bought a house while I was fighting. I did everything that a normal everyday person should strive to do. And I just committed a little bit extra of my time. Instead of watching TV at night, I was at the gym, and instead of going out on the piss on the weekend, I was at the gym, or I was asleep because I was too tired to go out anyway. So that, I just did it as extra on top of my job, and that's just the part of me. But getting into UFC, once it became part of my mind and something that I thought was possible, then I didn't give up until I made it.
So you made the right choices, and I mean, you could have burnt all the bridges, right? Burnt all the bridges and just gone all in, but you decided to have the balance, and it's obviously worked out really great for you. How did the schools then come about? How did you transition from all the focus on the fighting to opening the schools? Well, let's talk school number one.
I always wanted to be in business. My dad's in business, and other people in my family are in business, and I sort of thought that it was something in my future was going into business, and I just didn't really have sort of like anything to do. I mean, like if you drive a truck, you go into business, you typically buy trucks, and I was a baker. I was going to go into business when I was 21, and I pulled the pin on it, joined the army. You can't go into business with the army, right? So it's sort of like, what can you do? Well, it got to the end of not the end of my fight career, because I kept fighting, but it got the end of my UFC tenure, and they released me. And I sort of thought to myself, spoke to my wife and said, like, now's my opportunity to either use what I've just done for the last 9 or 10 years and teach it to the next generation and help people not make the same mistakes, or I could throw it all out the window and work in my job at the jail for the next 32 years until I retire, and just go from job to job maybe, or stay there until I'm a bitter old depressed prison guard, and then try to retire happily, but probably not, because I've got issues. So it's like, I just thought, I had two choices at that time, and it was the perfect time in my life for me to go into business and to do something that I was not just qualified to do, but truly passionate about, which is teach martial arts. So That was how it came about. I just didn't want to do it while I was in the UFC, but it had been on my mind. Mainly because I didn't want to be tied down to coaching in the hours that I normally would train. So, yeah, I just sort of come to a crossroads and pulled the trigger, and that's how we opened the first one. And then we went from the first one in 2 years. We opened the second one, which was just moving the first one to a building that was 2.5 times the size, and we put massage and physio and everything in it. And yeah, we just sort of got about 3 years in, and I never really envisioned franchising or anything like that. I sort of thought it might be nice to have 3 or 4 schools, but everything needed to make sense. And I'm definitely a person that goes off my gut feel, and my gut feel was telling me that it made sense to open another one. Where we opened it wasn't where we were going to open it. We were going to go somewhere else. Probably still will go there one day, so I won't let that cat out of the bag. But just due to, property options and whatnot in a pretty heavy market where like there was only sort of 5% of buildings that were available, so trying to get something just seemed very difficult. So we opted for North Lakes, and my business partner up there. So the second gym set up on a like a 50-50 type share situation, and there's a management wage, and that's just sort of how we set it up, and it just made a lot of sense. I had the right person at the right time, in the right location, and we pulled the trigger on it. So yeah, it's really good. I like it. It's taken off. Everything's working well.
So, but just give us a quick breakdown on the time frame. So 1 to 500 students, 2 locations, and that's over, you said 3 years?
4.
4 years. Cool. How quickly did you grow the first one? And where's the first one at student-wise?
We grew it really slowly.
Okay.
So before we ever advertised anywhere, everything was organic, and we grew to 100 members in a year. And then we finally made a profit 1 month, and I took that profit and I spent it on advertising, and then we just sort of kept growing from there. So yeah, and now we've got a few hundred members now in one location, so it's pretty good.
Yeah, cool. I mean, congrats. From all the school owners I talked to, I mean, in 4 years to go to 2 locations and 500 odd students, that's remarkable. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been an incredible experience. I mean, I think what's missing in a lot of martial arts schools is typically martial arts for most people is like a second home. And I think, actually, it's funny. I had a conversation this morning with someone about commercialization and trying to avoid commercializing martial arts to make sure that we maintain the, original values and purpose of it, which is, self-defense, respect, discipline, confidence, self-esteem, mental health, positive mental health, and all of those sort of values. You want to maintain those, but most of all, like, everyone gets into some kind of martial arts for, self-defense and confidence, So I feel like there's a balance between commercializing that and maintaining it. And martial arts gyms are typically a home away from home. And if you commercialize it too much, you lose that home away from home feel, because everything becomes about money and not about, it becomes about money and not so much about the martial arts and like the friendships and the relationships and stuff that are built there. So I just feel like we've been very fortunate that my values fall in line with, I'm teaching something that I love, but, it's more about how many people I can help and, how people feel when they walk through the door and how they feel when they walk out of it, as opposed to how much money they paid me that week. or whether they're going to pay me for gradings and stuff like that. We don't charge for gradings. And so I don't focus a lot on the money. I focus more on what I can give people. And I feel like that has made a huge difference for us. You know, we're not just a gym. We've never just been a gym. That's not what it's been about. And you can read all the reviews and people feel like we're more than a gym. That's where it's at. That's where retention's built. That's where, you know, new members are built. They walk through, they can feel the vibe. That's where everything comes from. And so I feel like that's been huge for us.
How do you feel you started like creating that within the culture? Because I mean, obviously it starts out as you, right? But as the student base grows, it's not, I mean, it is about, you know, people might be attracted to you and your experience and so forth, but it becomes about the school, the vibe, the culture. How do you replicate that?
It's like a tree, you know, like I was the seed and as it grows, there's branches, right? And without the bottom branches, the next ones don't grow. It's sort of like, you know, there's like, say like, I don't know what the average is, but I'll probably give out, yeah, there's probably like 10 people that started in my gym that will get black belts. You know what I mean? Out of the first 100. It's like probably less than that, right? Probably like 2 out of the first 100 that will get black belts because that's how many will stay. But those 2 that stay, they form, you know, the foundation, and then they pass it on to the next 2 out of the next 100 that stay. And all of a sudden, you know, it's not just about me creating it. It's about, like, I got senior guys in this gym that when I say senior, like they've been here since the start. Their kids are here. Their wives train here. They train here, you know, and it's about, like, on a Saturday, one will bring a carton of beer in, and it's like, give 1 beer to everyone. And it's sort of like, that's just who we are, you know. Do you want one? Do you want to hang out? Let's hang out after training and talk for half an hour. And then everyone goes their separate way. But no one has to go to the pub that night because everyone's sort of just, you know, we are our own family. And so that starts at me. Not that I'm promoting drinking or anything, but yeah, it's just an example. Like that's what one person could do. The other one would be like, oh, you know, we haven't gone and done this for a while. We should organise that. Or, you know, people said to me the other week, it was like, we haven't had a barbecue for a while. Yep, you know what, you're right, we haven't. It's been a few months, so let's have a barbecue. So it just starts with me, and then it's others that recognise what I used to do, and then we pass that on. And you know, I challenge my members at times to, you know, this week, my challenge to you is to say hello to a person that you haven't spoken to, or that you haven't seen, or someone that you haven't talked to in the last 3 months. Walk up to them, say good day, ask them how they're going. And that's going to change their day, because you might be the guy on the other side of the room that they've seen for 3 months but never talked to. And that happens when there's like hundreds of members. It's, anyone that thinks, you know, a gym with 50 members in it is the same with a gym with 300 members in it or 500 members in it, it's kidding themselves. So it's just about, you know, when there's 50 members, it's me asking 50 people how they're going. When there's 100, it's me and 10 other people asking 100 people how they're going. If it was 1,000, you know, I'd think that there's 50 members in that 1,000 that would have been with me long enough to go and ask the other 950 how they're going. And there's just a continuous flow from there. So I feel like as long as I started it with my values and my thoughts and you know, what was close to me, which is given more than you take, then I'll attract people that do the same thing. And by doing that, it continuously gets passed along, and that's how we maintain the culture.
That's amazing. Do you do different things on the mat with that as well, like within your classes and your teaching, to really emphasize on that, to put focus on building the culture?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think any gym does, really. Sometimes I'll grab all the color belts and tell them they've got to roll with a white belt tonight. Sometimes I'll say go with someone you haven't been with for 3 months. Sometimes I'll get them in groups of 3 and make sure there's a white belt with every group. You know, and there's all different ways that you can sort of make people feel included. At the end of the day, inclusivity is kind of what everything's built on. Like if people feel excluded, then they'll go somewhere else. So there's strategies that we put in place on the mat to make sure that those people who, always go to one end of the mat is what happens with us. They all form up and then they go to one end of the mat. It's like all the white belts are down here and all the color belts are here. So, I'll look around and, sometimes we'll have 10 females in the room, and typically females in the gym have a lot of anxiety about rolling with men and stuff like that, particularly in jiu-jitsu rather than karate, where there's a lot of contact. And jiu-jitsu really invades your personal space. So, sometimes I'll particularly partner them up with people in the gym that I think are reasonably chill or super experienced, and get them flowing because it's good for their confidence. And then when their skill set matches their confidence, then they can hold their own and they'll roll with whoever they want. So there's all different sorts of strategies as a coach. I think one of the biggest assets you can have as a coach is being able to read your room. You've got to understand who's who, where they're at, what they're scared of. Are they a threat? Can they potentially hurt someone because they're dangerous with their skill set, as in inexperienced with their skill set, but believe they're better than they are? Like, there's all sorts of things you got to be able to do to manage an environment like that. And my biggest job is trying to teach my coaches how to read the room. I feel I could do it reasonably well, but I've done a lot of instructing and military and stuff like that. And typically you got to always be able to read people. And I've worked in jobs where I've got to read people in sort of confrontational type situations as well. And so I feel like I'm probably hyper alert. Okay. So it's probably like the good thing my deployment did for me. I'm very hyper alert, hypersensitive. So I'm always looking around, like everything's going on. And so one of the biggest things for me is probably trying to teach my coaches how to read the room and stuff like that. Most of us start out in a gym knowing the technique we're delivering, and that's what gets us a coaching gig, but coaching's more than that. And everything comes over time. So yeah, probably trying to, teach them is a big thing at the moment, and then get them to put strategies in place to be able to manage the room as well. So yeah, it's definitely, there's a lot to it, that's for sure.
Yeah, I love the focus on the awareness and how you're in tune with who's got what fears, reading a room, break up the groups as they segregate into different parts. Do you feel that's, transferring your martial arts skills, that's one thing, but then transferring skills that you picked up potentially in the military, and you've got a different level of awareness of picking things up. You find that really hard to transfer to your coaches?
I think the hardest thing to transfer to other people or to teach other people is instincts. So anything that becomes common sense and instinctual is the hardest thing to pass on. So anything that's educational, like there's ways to read a room, so to speak, or there's strategies, educational type stuff to read a room. And then there's just, you can just see people and start to feel that people are, if you feel that someone's a problem, or someone, can go from 0 to 3,000 really quickly. Like, there's no strategy to sort of pick that up. You just got to be aware of your surroundings and be aware of who's on the mat and whatnot. But you can teach them how to put things in place to make sure that those people are controlled, but you can't teach them how to identify those people. That's just something they've got to have time in a coaching role to be able to do. The more time they run classes, the more they're in charge of classes, the more they'll pick up on certain people. But as far as the management of members and strategies for how to run a class, you can always teach them that stuff. And that's pretty easy.
Damien, great. I've got 2 more questions for you. You mentioned that your dad really enforced your martial arts journey. How have you adapted that with your kids? Is martial arts non-negotiable? And is there a point, if it is, would there be a point where you maybe back off? Or
that's an interesting question, because it's pawns a dilemma for me. So martial arts is a non-negotiable for my son, but it's not forced, because this is my life and I want him to love it. So he has to do jiu-jitsu no matter what, but I don't force him to do it 3, 4, 5 times a week. We ask him if he wants to do it every day there's a class on. And if he says no, we take him home and make him do his homework. And if he says yes, we take him in and he does class. He had his first gi when he was 22 months old, and he used to just roll with me for a couple of years. And then he asked to start classes, so we put him in classes. And then he went through a phase where he didn't want to do it, so we took him out. And, you know, I think my dad didn't have to force me, but forced my sister. But he didn't have to force me because I loved it anyway. But it was a non-negotiable at the start. Like, this is what you're doing. So I feel like the discipline, the respect and everything that I got from doing martial arts, it's hard to put your finger on exactly what it was. But when people ask me how we teach them that, I feel like, particularly this day and age, kids get the discipline, respect and all that from listening to someone that's not their parent. Teachers have no power. So anyone else in their life that's teaching them anything have no power. You know what I mean? You put your kids in martial arts, you let them on the mat, you walk away, you sit upstairs, you sit outside, whatever it is, and you let that person teach your kids for the next 30 minutes in an environment where you basically sign off on allowing them to put them in lines, put them in ranks, you know, and pull them up for talking over people, pull them up for, you know, poking their friend on the mat or tripping a kid over. Like, that sort of stuff needs to be chipped, and there's just no one in this world that has any power to do it anymore. But even when we did, martial arts is just such a great teacher of all of those things, because martial arts coaches typically don't just let kids get away with tripping kids over or talking over them. You know, physical punishments, whatever it is you decide to do, as in push-ups, bear crawls around the mat, squats, something like that. It's all just more exercise and burning your kids out, but at the same time they get that discipline and respect from that. So by doing something fun to them, they're learning how to be respectful at the same time, and then they get better, and with getting better comes confidence and higher self-esteem and stuff like that. So I think that just martial arts all around is amazing for kids, and so my son has to do it, fully non-negotiable, but I can't force it because it's my life and I don't want him to grow up and hate it. So I've definitely had multiple conversations with myself on what the best approach is. And I just think just letting him do it when he wants to do it. If he hasn't done it for a while, we make him do it. So if he has a week off, or you know, he gets like a week and a half in and he hasn't done a class, we just say, hey, mate, you haven't done a class for 2 weeks. If you go in tonight and you do a class, you can stay for 20 minutes and play with your mates afterwards. And they come upstairs and play. And he gets to play with his mates. He's an only child, so he loves playing with other kids. And so he gets to play with his mates and does jiu-jitsu. And he's good at it. You know, he's done a comp already.
Right.
Got a couple of medals, so we just don't force it. But he asked me a bunch of questions today, funny enough, on the way to school about jiu-jitsu and what he's got to do to get to the next belt and stuff like that. So he's starting to get interested in it. It's just taken time, you know, and he's not as good as some other kids at his age, despite the fact that his dad's a black belt. And that's just because, you know, I feel like there's a fine line in balancing and forcing it onto your own child when it is your life. I don't want my son to hate coming to the gym with me.
Yeah, the longevity of it. Yeah, I took that. Well, for myself, I probably forced my son into Zendokai from 5 to 7, and then Muay Thai, and then to the point that he probably said, well, he turned around and said, Dad, I don't want to do this anymore. It's been a few years, but he's now 16, 17. He's talking about Muay Thai again. So I'm confident it's going to loop back. My daughter, I forced into Jiu-Jitsu. And then we moved to the Sunshine Coast, and I took her to a place, and she fell in the arms. She said, nah. And I was like, okay, it's time I I back off just a little bit.
Yeah, it's just a funny one, and there's a lesson taught to me by my mate Ian, was that our job as a coach is to make sure that kids between the age of whatever you start in your school, so for us it's 4 to 13, the 14-year-olds do our adults classes, but my job is to make sure that any child between the age of 4 and 13 loves jiu-jitsu until they turn 16. Okay, so if I'm too hard on them and they hate it and they don't like it, they leave. My job is to make sure that I teach them jiu-jitsu, but I make sure they have enough fun that they want to stay in jiu-jitsu until they're 16. When they're 16, they get graded as an adult. They start learning as an adult. It's a little bit different. They get to make their own choices. But if I can make them enjoy it that much that they stay from the age of 4 till 16, then I've now got a long-term member. I've got a kid that's done jiu-jitsu for 12 years that's now going to get a blue belt and go on to be a great adult addition to my gym. So,
yeah,
we focus on that. We want the kids to have fun. We want them to learn jiu-jitsu, but we're not out here, breaking their balls and making sure they do comps and being like, you must be the best at jiu-jitsu, Kid, that's not why we're teaching kids jiu-jitsu. That's not why we're teaching kids martial arts. We're teaching kids martial arts so they can benefit from everything that martial arts offers. And to do that, they need to enjoy it long enough to do it. So that's what we focus on.
That's so good. Damien, thanks so much for your time. Just one more question. What's next for you? Where are you headed with your journey in the martial arts and base training center?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Day by day?
I didn't start my first gym with a plan of opening something bigger. I didn't start my second gym with a plan of, it's like my second location with the plan of opening a second gym. I didn't start fighting so I could make it to the UFC. I just do something and then see where it takes me. And, we've got 2 now. Maybe we would have 3. Maybe we'll do base jiu-jitsu. Maybe we'll do, I don't know. I don't know what's next, really, to be honest with you. I just focus on the 2 I got, focus on the members I have and make sure that they enjoy martial arts. And to be honest, I think every business in the country is probably feeling the pinch of the interest rates right now. So, my job right now is to make sure the members we have stay and make sure that they enjoy the environment that we provide and the martial arts we provide, and then go from there. See if we can ride it out.
Cool. Well, I'll loop back into your journey in a couple of down the line, and we'll see where things are at.
Sure, man. That'll be good.
Thanks, Damien. If anybody wants to reach out to you or get in touch with you, how would they do that? Your socials, etc.
People can reach out to me on all social media at beatdown155. But particularly if you want to train martial arts, you're in North Brisbane area, so Brendale or North Lakes and surrounds, you can reach out to us at Base Training Center on Instagram or Facebook, or check out our website, base-training.com.au. We offer a free class for everyone to try it out. Make sure we're the fit for you. And, yeah.
Love it. Cool. Thanks so much, Damien.
No worries, man. Thanks for that.
Cheers.
Appreciate it. See ya.
Thanks so much for tuning in. Did you enjoy the show? Did you get some value from it? If so, please do us a favor and share it with someone you care about. Share it with another martial arts school owner or an instructor friend that might benefit from this episode. And I'd love to hear from you. If you got some good value out of it and you just want to reach out, send me a message on Instagram. My handle is George Fourie, George, last name Fourie, and just send me a message. And I'd love to hear from you if you got some value from this. And last but not least, if you need some help growing your martial arts school, need help with attracting the right students or increasing your signups or retaining more members, then get in touch with us. Go to our website, martialartsmedia.com/scale. And we've got a short little questionnaire that just asks a few questions about your business to give us an idea of what it is that you have going on. And then typically from that, we jump on a quick 10, 15-minute call just to work out if or how we can be of help. Not a sales call. It's really a fit and discovery call for us to get an idea if we can be of help. And that's that. Would love to hear from you, and I'll see you on the next episode. Cheers.